All right, so Western Cape Community Policing Board spokesperson Rafique Foflonker joins us now for reaction. Thank you so much for your time, Rafique. So those second quarter stats are now out with that increase of 15.3% with regards to the murder rate, and the city of Cape Town contributing 80% of that. Knowing your efforts as the CPF within the province, what's your reaction to these numbers?
Look, it's still shock. Every year, every quarter, we go for the same thing, and we keep reporting the same thing. We are always surprised by the numbers, but the problem is that we need to do things differently in the country. We need to do things differently in the province, and I think that's the big message we want to get out there. Is that the same thinking and old tools is not going to change the situation. We talk a lot about addressing the underlying social issues, and clearly, when you look at the LEAP program, and I think they were reporting on the LEAP program earlier too, the LEAP program has shown significant benefits in the areas that they are deployed in. But it does come under fire when you look at sustainability and scalability challenges. So the SAPS is under-resourced. But clearly, when we deploy them in hotspot areas or when we deploy them in high-density operations, you do see a reduction in immediate crime. But there's a displacement that takes place there because criminals who have nothing else to do have to commit crime. It's part of the job that they do. And so if they are blocked from doing it in a particular area, then the adjacent areas are then vulnerable. So addressing the social issues, substance abuse and treatment programs, if we just start there, we don't have enough rehabilitation centers and substance abuse treatment programs in the country. For those of us working on the ground and those of us doing counseling and whatnot, when you try to get people onto or into a program or a rehabilitation center, the waiting periods are long. The barrier to entry is large, and there just isn't enough programs. We throw money at all kinds of programs in the country, but this is one area that we are lacking in. And then mental health outreach. Trying to get hold of a government social worker or a government counselor, like a psychologist or a psychiatrist, is like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And those programs are just so exorbitantly expensive to get in private practice. And trying to get that within the public space is just impossible for some people. And if we can focus some of our social efforts there, because all the policing in the world is most likely not going to change the social root cause of the problem. Now, we're not even talking about unemployment. We're not talking about parenting. We're not talking about any of those yet. We're just talking about substance abuse and mental health outreach, two areas that, are sorely lacking in terms of underlying social issues.
Certainly, Rafique, and if you mention some of these social issues, we see them playing out a lot when it comes to gangsterism within the Western Cape. The arrest of some of the gang leaders and members was also highlighted in the release of these stats. But what do you think is the long-term plan in order to dismantle a lot of these gang networks?
Look, one of the areas that we talk about would be youth diversion and gang prevention, right? So when you look at the youth, look at youth-focused programs, they need to be expanded simply just to interrupt the gang recruitment pipeline. And a lot of these kids that are out there, even adults as well, but we are seeing younger and younger members of our society, kids basically, children, being recruited into gangs. And they go there for various reasons. But there are not that many after-school and weekend programs in high-risk areas. Yes, the province and the state does do plenty of things there, but what matters here is sustainability. I don't think one soccer match or one soccer tournament or one big festival once every 6 months is going to cut it. We need programs daily, Monday to Friday, after school, in the time period where school ends and the parents come home. Kids need to have attention in that time frame. Maybe homework assistance, sporting codes. We need an entire industry around diverting kids into healthy activities after school. And then skills development and employment for youth at risk. And then the actual diversionary programs offered as an alternative to prosecution for minor offenses. I think we need a lot more work in that space. And then looking at what we already have in the justice system as the restorative justice, as an adjacent to the diversionary programs, we need to look at that more seriously. We're really good in South Africa about talking about these things at an academic level. But what we need is some real action on the ground and some funding for it. And we're not talking about flavor of the month or project of the quarter. We need something that is sustainable and that is long term. And that's really the way to go. Otherwise, we can throw as many policing resources at some of our social fabric issues. All we're going to do is quiet it down for a moment, displace it to an adjacent area. And when the high density police or army or whatever you want to use moves on to something else, then the vacuum gets filled up again. And sometimes it gets worse. So yeah, we need those diversionary programs, but we need sustainable programs.
I mean, you speak about doing differently. What do you think, Rafique, is at the heart of many of the places in which we are failing with all the resources and all the programs and all the talk that you speak of? What are we missing?
At the end of the day, community engagement is key. But why don't our communities engage? And it's tiring to listen to communities talk about police corruption. It's tiring when communities talk about trust and they refer back to pre-apartheid years. The fact is that we need to take responsibility for our actions, for our kids, and we need to stop hiding and protecting the criminals within our societies. We need to stop benefiting from the spoils of crime and criminality. And that is part of the problem, because in many areas, when the police want to do their work, then the community has an objection. When the police don't do their work, then there's an uproar. And when they do their work, then they get stoned in certain areas. Now, where policing resources are needed the most, there's a resistance on the part of the community. So we are then perpetuating the cycle of violence. So with community engagement, people need to be part of the solution. They need to be part of the transformation that they want to see. And how do they do that? They have to become part of the civic organizations. They have to get out there and attend civic meetings. They have to engage with their ward councillors. They can't sit at home and have a ward meeting, a council meeting, a civic meeting, a neighborhood watch meeting. And then in a population of 5,000, then you get 30 people that attend the meeting. And the excuse is that nothing changes. Well, that attitude is self-defeating, and it's really part of the problem. And so neighborhood watch safety forums, neighborhood watch structures, community police forums, and any other violence prevention or social uplifting programs need to be funded and staffed or need to be attended by the local people. You know, if you look at some of these programs, you'll find that the same people are doing it in the community. The same people will work in the civic, the community police forums, will work in the neighborhood watches, will work in the soup kitchens, will be the ones handing out food, will be the ones doing all kinds of stuff, will be responding to people's calls at night when there's crime. And these people are largely overlooked and underappreciated in their communities, and they will burn out. So we need our communities to come up, to get up, stand up, take hands, and we need them to stop being lazy. We need them to stop making excuses, and we just need them to get out there and join the few people that's already trying to make a difference in our society.
Do you think that our communities are psychologically impacted by violent crime, that maybe perhaps they then respond in the way that they are?
Absolutely. I think everybody that you can touch is a victim of violence and is traumatized by what they see, even if they've never really faced the trauma directly. Even listening to other people and their trauma, having a family member, or just watching the news. Watching the news can be traumatizing. You know, you could be paralyzed with fear, and you might not even want to go out in the street. That's how bad it can be. But at the end of the day, if we are afraid, and if we don't stand up, if we remain silent, then we are allowing crime to thrive, right? And what type of society are we living in when we don't want to stand up and protect our families? What are we going to leave for the next generation, the kids, if we don't want to make changes today? We might not see the fruits of our efforts in our lifetime, but we certainly need to get out there and start sowing the seeds for change in the future. And people need to do this one step at a time. Some people can't visualize the big picture, right? But that's fine. Just do your small part. And if everybody does a small part, we will accomplish the big things.
And where do we then, for communities, find that balance between the fear that they possibly would have for those that are perpetuating these crimes and the lack of trust that they would then not have, or the lack of trust that they have in the police system? Because that then would create a community that would not be reporting those that are impacting and creating a lot of the violence within these communities, simply because there's also not that trust within the police service.
Yeah, that is a very intricate question, and knowing who to trust, that is really a problem. I do agree, and the good news is that when you look at what's happening in Madlanga Commission and the other commissions that's out there, it's still amazing to see that a country like South Africa is still uncovering corruption and is addressing it. And the fact that we can read about this corruption at such a high level, on the one hand, you feel very despondent, but on the other hand, you must realize that the fact that we can hear about it, the fact that we can put people on trial for high crimes like that, and the fact that we can address it it leaves us with some hope. Because once you can identify a problem and you can identify a perpetrator and you can take them through the justice system, then there is hope for us, right? So when people don't trust, they have to remember a few things. One, at every station, there is a station commander. And those station commanders are usually the go-to people when you have privileged information or confidential information. When you have to report something and you don't want to call the number, you don't want to talk to any police officer on the street, you can always go talk to the station commander directly. They usually will share their numbers and they hold information in the strictest confidence. SAPS has a confidential tip of line, and I will tell you that that tip of line has not been compromised to my knowledge. And that tip of line, that information is handled with the utmost sensitivity and is a go-to place for sensitive information. And then, of course, you have your community police forums. And the CPF chairperson and the deputy chairperson, those are your two go-to people in the community. If you don't know who to trust, they will at least direct you to the right people within the SAPS, because they work very closely with a key partner, which is the station commander within the police station. And these are people that you should be able to reach out to say, who can I speak to? And eventually, what you will find is that once you start working within the system, you start to learn how to funnel information and how the trust relationship works. But I can certainly understand why people on the outside looking in might feel very despondent because they don't know who to trust. But like I said, station commander, the 800 number for the tip of line, and then your CPF chairperson and deputy chairperson, those are the people that you most likely can go to with information, and you can trust that they will funnel it in the right direction.
Most certainly. So Rafique, thank you so much for your time. We certainly do hope that when we do get statistics such as these, we are able to use some of this data-driven policing in order to influence the strategies that we then employ when we try to reduce those numbers of crime within our communities. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. So that was Western Cape Community Police Board spokesperson Rafique Foflonker.